And thank you very much for joining us here on this special edition of Ghana Connect. And my name is Evans Mensah. As part of our agenda to make this year's elections issues-based, we have been to your communities to find out what issues will influence your vote come December 7. Apart from roads and the issue of jobs, we engaged quite a number of persons with disability. Everywhere we went, they raised a myriad of issues, some of which are not new, but remains a problem. Now, here are some of the clips from the ballot box interactions that we've been having with you in your communities across the country this year.
I'm Augustine Asangba. My stake is on, I would like to ask the parliamentary candidates what they will do to employ persons with disability who are graduates, for them to stop the hazards of going around looking for jobs. What would they do for them to get an automatic employment so that they'll stop roaming the length and breadth of this country looking for job, and then staying in the house for wasteful years, more than 35 years before they get a job? Can they do any policy? Help us with a particular policy so that persons with disability will be automatically employed after they've completed their education. Thank you.
We want to see how much the MPs especially will come to our aid in terms of getting us a resource center. We in Boku here, we don't have any place that we can meet. We have to meet under trees near the social welfare grounds. And anytime it's raining, we have to run for dear life. So this is one of the things that any MP that will promise us a place of meeting, a resource center, we would easily vouch for that MP. Thank you very much for the moment.
Thank you very much, Dr. Azari. Let me get to Hawa and find out from Hawa also what issues will be influencing her decision. Hawa, what are those issues?
The issues are plenty, but my Dr. Zara speaks some. So the issue, the common fund is the one, and those who, some of them they are here today. They don't have bicycle, and some too don't have a cross hands. Many people they want those. Many people want those things. We want the MP who can promise and buy the cross hands and the motorbike for them.
So you heard the views there. Some of it we collected from across the country as the ballot box train went around. We're focusing on persons with disability, an aspect that you will not get to hear enough of in this political season. But Ghana Connect, with support from the Star Ghana Foundation, with funding from the UK Aid and the European Union, is making it possible for us to have this conversation tonight in this special edition of Ghana Connect, as we connect people with disability both home and abroad to have this conversation. Of course, tonight we'll interact with various stakeholders among persons with disability, find out how the parties will address their concerns. Ghanaians all across the country will connect to explore. Get onto our many social media platforms and get connecting. Yes, we are having this conversation with just over 20 days to the elections because this is important. We've had all the conversations this year here on your election headquarters. We want to be inclusive in our coverage in the lead up to the elections, and that is why we are happy to partner the Star Ghana Foundation with funding from the UK AID and the European Union to connect these voices. In the studio with me is Alexander Tete, who is an executive director of the Center for Employment of Persons with Disabilities. Newton Kacheku Kwamla is executive director of the Ghana Association of Persons with Albinism. Thank you for connecting.
Thank you very much.
I'm grateful that you could connect with us here in the studio. Alexander Bankole Williams is the chairman of the National Advocacy Committee as well as a member of the Employment Committee of the Ghana Federation of Disability Organizations, and he's going to connect via Zoom tonight. Dr. Otiko Afisa-Jaba is the Executive Director of the Henry Jaba Memorial Foundation and a former gender minister herself. She will connect via Zoom. Dr. Obinga Somwa is the President of the Ghana Blind Union, also connects via Zoom tonight. Wherever you are tonight, I want you to connect also using many social media platforms. Go on to Facebook, Joy News or Joy 99.7 tonight. Best way to get us, hashtag Ghana Connect, or hit me up at Nwete on Twitter, and let's have this conversation together. I want to start with the man who has been leading the ballot box team across this country. You know him, Winston Amwa, my partner in political reporting here at Joy News, who's joining me right now, because one of the things that we do with ballot box is to collate the views in a systematic, scientific manner, so we are able to assess what the real issues are that people will be basing their votes on, just to give a sense of what people are thinking, so we can put these questions to the parties who are seeking your vote for some answers. So Winston is connecting tonight via Zoom. Hello, Winston. So I want us to quickly go through what you found across the country when it came to these issues of inclusiveness and the disability question.
All right, so Evans, going through the country, one of the things that we've discovered is that there are some persons living with disability who've requested for an increase in the disability fund at the district assembly level from 3% to 5%. There are those who've also asked, for instance, that any person with disability who completes tertiary education should automatically be placed in a job by government. They feel that would actually encourage persons with disability. And there are those who've also called for resource centers. And there are those who've also asked, for instance, that when they go to state institutions, they do not have sign language interpreters. For those who cannot speak and who cannot hear, it becomes a challenge for them. For many of these persons, these are some of the things they would need, including a resource center dedicated for persons with disability. Evans.
Okay. And obviously, these are key important issues for them. These are the issues that will influence your vote, at least the disability community in Ghana.
Exactly. I mean, based on our interactions with them, these are the things they have told us. They've told us that, look, these are the things that will be influencing their choices come December 7. They've asked for a resource center. They've asked for an increase in their, disability fund from 3 to 5%. They've also asked for the implementation of our laws, which were passed in 2006, had a moratorium of 10 years, and we're expecting that by 2016, all public buildings would be disability friendly. Unfortunately, that hasn't happened in some of the public buildings. And for many of these persons, they believe that, look, these are the things that would influence the choices they make. These are the things that concern them most.
I mean, one of the things that you've also been doing with the ballot box train is once you get the views, you put it to the politicians. I mean, those who are seeking to lead them. Do you get a sense that they appreciate these concerns and issues based on where the disability group, our friends with disabilities will be voting? And have they thought through what the policy proposals will be to address these concerns?
Well, Evans, when we put these questions to the politicians, they are committed to ensuring that some of these concerns are addressed. In Pohwe, for instance, all of them talked about the need to have, persons with disability having sign language interpreters in a lot of the state institutions. One thing that none of them has really addressed has to do with the issue of, having persons with disability automatically guaranteed jobs once they complete tertiary institutions. Also because many of these persons are prospective lawmakers, and for them, their challenge is that, well, I'm seeking to represent you in Parliament. I can only advocate on your behalf. But when it comes to, the legislation, for instance, when it comes to the increment in the fund from 3% to 5%, they've all shown commitment to it. When we're in Boku, for instance, it came out there that a member of Parliament is one who's been very committed to issues that affect persons with disability. They testify to it. Dr. David Azari talking about it, but also those who were there committed to ensuring that these concerns that they have would be addressed. The challenge, however, has to do with the issue of automatic job placements.
Automatic job placements. I wonder, we have a Disability Council, we have a Disability Act. What sense did you get when you interacted with this, with the group, that about the enforcement and implementation of the Disability Act, for example, and the work of the Disability Council?
Well, Evans, the bit about it, enforcement is one of the things that affects them the most because, for these persons, and as all of us would know, we have very good laws in this country. The challenge, though, is the implementation of the laws. And so one of the things they've called for, one of the things they've talked about is that, look, yes, it is good you put these, bodies in place, but what is it about putting a body in place if the body cannot perform the functions that are expected of the body? And so for them, they want a situation where these bodies that have been put in place to ensure their welfare are giving the needed assistance to enable them perform their duties.
Okay, I mean, and you see that clearly the issues that affect them are well articulated. I mean, but clearly the gap that you see is the opposite end in terms of those duty bearers or those seeking their votes. In terms of couching the solutions to address all these issues, I get a sense that it's not as in sync as obviously that core group of constituents within the Friends with Disability may want.
Well, talking about the legislative bit, for instance, and the Article 108.1 that says, Parliament should not, amend bills that would pose financial burden on the state. And I'm paraphrasing. And so when it comes to the bit of having, sign language interpreters, a bit of, having an increase, the MPs have talked about the need to lobby to have the ministers come in there and do that. Because also the handicap is the provision of the law. Now, if you're increasing common fund, share of common fund from 3 to 5%, would it in any way affect the consolidated fund? If you're talking about, for instance, the need to have sign language interpreters in all facilities, would it affect the consolidated fund? These are questions the MPs say, well, we're going to be lobbying to ensure that these things are done. But while they can lobby for these things easily because there's legislation which they could push to have it done, when it comes to the need to say everybody should get a job, they think, well, that's a bit difficult and would have to, relate to government policy. However, when it comes to the resource centers, yes, the MPs have talked about the fact that they have their own share of the common fund, and there's a possibility they could do that. But also the challenge is that the common fund, the MP share of the common fund may not be enough to deal with it. So that is the situation in which we find ourselves in. As much as they, empathize or maybe sympathize with them, the challenge is the funding. What it would take to have these policies implemented is where the challenge is, Evans.
Okay. I mean, that clearly lays out what the issues are for us tonight as we begin to look into it. Thank you very much, Winston. Winston has been traveling with our team across the country on our ballot box shows. And of course, I summed up what the issues key are for us tonight. As I indicated, connecting tonight is Alexander Tete. He's an executive director of the Center for Employment for Persons with Disabilities. I'm grateful that you joined us in the studio. Newton Kachuku Kwamala is the executive director of Ghana Association of Persons with Albinism. Is also with me in the studio. Alexander Bankole Williams is the chairman of the National Advocacy Committee, as well as a member of the Employment Committee of the Ghana Federation of Disability Organizations. Connect via Zoom, Dr. Tiko Fiso-Jaba, executive director of the Henry Jaba Memorial Foundation and former gender minister. She joins us, connect via Zoom. Dr. Sama is the president of the Ghana Blind Union. We'll also connect very shortly. I want to start with you, Newton, on the key issues that has been laid out this year. What for you are they? Because I know the issues are not monolithic. In other words, the issues that will affect the persons with albinism will be different from the persons with disabilities. It's not monolithic. It would be wrong to think that it's the same. For you, what are the key issues? What are the key issues going into big elections like this, with everybody campaigning and throwing policies around?
Thank you very much for the opportunity, and I want to wish use this opportunity also to say a very big condolences to the former president's family, the Jerry John Rawlings' family, for the loss, and to the entire Ghanaian.
In fact, having said that, I think it's, I need to ask that before we begin, really. He must have a legacy, at least when it comes to persons with disability. I mean, he was the founding president of the Fourth Republic. Yeah. The Constitution was drafted. I mean, he sort of ushered it in. And the Constitution has several clauses on this, you know, third, anti-discrimination clauses in there that he superintended. Let me start with you. What for you would be former President Rawlings's key legacy in this area of dealing with persons with disability and couching policy that helps them thrive?
As rightly said, it boils down with the fundamental human rights that is being captured in the Constitution. That gives right to all manner of persons, irrespective of their ability and disability. That to me, as a person with albinism, a person with disability, I would ensure most. Because as a person with disability in the disability fraternity, the most important thing is the right to life. So if you have the protection, and the Constitution is even protecting who our founder, the founder of the Fourth Republican president, has put in place, which is being documented. That one alone is the protection on the disability right of the disability. That's a legacy we can ensure most.
Okay, great. Alexander, what's yours?
Yeah, thank you very much. And I think that for the former president's legacy, the first one is the Constitution. The second is about the sense and the spirit of discipline and empathy among Ghanaians. Yeah. As at that time, everybody was willing to do the right thing, ensure that persons with disabilities are given space to participate. Okay. This time is no more. This time is about survival of the fittest, and nobody cares about the weaker persons within society. So for me, I think it was the generality and the spirit among Ghanaians that President actually left for us.
Okay, yeah. So that's an important point. I want to go around with this because, I mean, there isn't any aspect of our national life that former President Rawlings did not touch. I mean, also because of how long he was at the helm as a military ruler to a civilian ruler. I mean, that's a long period of time to be in power, and definitely had impact on almost everybody. I want to bring in Alexander Bankole Williams also on this. Alexander, I mean, yesterday we all heard the tragic news, and I'm pretty sure among the disability community, you possibly also felt it as hard as everybody else. I mean, what for you? How would you and that community remember him, Jerry John Rawlings, in terms of what he did or what he stood for when it comes to dealing with issues of disability? You muted. Good. I can hear you now.
Okay. Thank you very much, Evans, and thank you to your station for the opportunity, and good evening to viewers and listeners as well. And the news of the passing of the ex-president, President Jerry John Rawlings, really came to us as a big surprise. I mean, I just had to check and realize that, oh, okay, actually, he attained 73 this year. Because of his vibrancy and passion, I presume he was just a little over 60. But for us as a disability community, like Newton clearly indicated, there is a lot we have to thank him for in relation to his legacy, and specifically ensuring that he adapted the approach that was adopted for gathering inputs to the development of 1992 Constitution, afforded the Ghana Federation of the Disabled then the opportunity to make a case at the Constitutional Assembly for what we see today as Article 29 of the 1992 Constitution, that penciled or specifically firmed up the rights of persons with disabilities in a solid legislation piece like the Constitution of Ghana. And in addition to that, in 1993, he ensured that what is deemed as an international customary legislation on the rights of persons with disabilities was implemented in Ghana. Now I'm talking about the UN standard rules on the rights of persons with disabilities. But most essentially, what we have as the Disability Act today, Act 715, had its springboard being the National Disability Policy. And this was developed and adopted in the year 2000 under former President Rawlings. And it is with that we began agitation for an actual legislation. It is not, his legacy is not just with legislations and policies, but he had a special touch with persons with disabilities. So I quite remember my days at the Ekropon School for the Blind when the former president made time to come and visit us in person during speech and prize giving days and sporting occasions, and personally interacted with us. And indeed, that is the kind of person he is. His desire to have a touch, a personal touch or contact with the masses, or particularly the marginalized groupings. So his loss is a great loss to not just his family and relatives or his political party, but to the entire Ghanaian community, but particularly to persons with disabilities as well.
Yeah, I mean,
and I would say,
yeah,
yes.
I mean that's a thorough, I guess, articulation of some of the key issues that he represented in terms of what he did for the disability community. Thankfully, Dr. Tuko Jaba joins us also via Zoom, and because of course she was a former gender minister. I mean, Madam Tuko Jaba, I mean, do you know him personally, Mr. Rawlings? And what's your fondest memory of him? Okay, I think we have a challenge. Yes, we can hear you now. Yes, good evening. I think we can hear you now.
I would like to. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you live. Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear now.
Can you hear me? Yes. I'm in my car on the way from Somanya.
Okay, great.
Yes. For me, former President Rawlings' death is unbelievable. It's a shock. And I am so sad that he has passed away so soon. I expected that he'll be with us for another 30 years. We learned that he buried his mother just a few weeks ago. Yes, he affected my life drastically in several ways. As a little girl, when my father had to run away outside Ghana on exile, that's because of President Rawlings. And I always said to my father that it's because of me that he had to go on exile, so that I'll learn more about poverty, because it changed my whole life and the direction in which I had wanted my life to go for the better. And I met him for the first time during the peace reconciliation. And then personally again, when I was the minister at the school at Mampong, SHS, where he was there to make a speech and I was there to represent the president. And then at the wedding of a friend, I met him again. Underestimate. He was a huge charismatic person, and we will always appreciate him for his frankness and his brutal nature of booming. And I'm using that word in a nice way, because some of the things that we would ordinarily be afraid to say, he would say them. And it's important that we have a person like him saying them so that we can be on our toes.
Yeah.
And so for me, his family, I want to extend my personal condolences.
Yes, Madam Tuko.
Yes, I have landed. I've said that I want to extend my personal condolences to Madame Kunedu and all his children and family. It is a loss for the whole of Ghana. He's a loss for the whole of Ghana. And maybe we should do a 1-minute silence sometime during this program, please.
Yeah, I mean, definitely at the tail end we will. Dr. Asamoah is the president of the Ghana Blind Union, also is connected tonight. And I'd like to hear his thoughts also on former President Rawlings. He'll join us shortly. I mean, so and now that we put it in context, I mean, and appreciating what former President Rawlings did for us, he was a politician. I mean, and I like the points that Alexander Bankole Williams articulated, how instrumental he was in some of the treaties and policies and laws that now become the bedrock of the protection of the rights of people with disability. He led it, right? Yeah. And we are approaching a time also when we have an elections, when he's laid a foundation for what it should be going forward. We've just had Winston articulate what the issues are from the ground, from the ballot box program. I want to come back to you again, Newton, to tell me for you what the top issues are when it comes to dealing with the constituency you represent.
Thank you very much once again. Dealing with the constituency which I represent, that is albinism community. Our problems, our challenges our issues are not far different from the entire disability fraternity. But to narrow it to the albinism fraternity, we need to look at the issue of education, and issue of security and employment. Okay. These are the issues that we want to look at. When we talk about health, what goes into health? Person with albinism, as we know, most people find it very difficult to accept that they are part of the disability fraternity. Albinism is a major issue, has to do with medical. So we're dealing with albinism, we're doing much better into medical than the physics that we see. Okay. So when we look at the albinism, we wanted to look at how our medical system caters for this group of people. Okay. We know persons with albinism have a skin condition. Yeah. Because they lack the melanin. So we needed what we call a sun protecting factor creams that they can apply. Okay. How fast, how better does our health insurance scheme cover that? Okay. When we talk about cancer treatment, how best does our health system capture treatment of cancer, especially as far as person with albinism is concerned? So we wanted to look at holistically, let's look at the health concern of person with albinism, which will affect their life. Going forward, education, which is very key. When we talk about inclusive education is on paper. It is not in practice. Person with albinism had sight problem or sight challenges. So the textbooks that they are using, the materials that we are using, is not a guarantee to person with albinism, where most of them will be able to access the print material that they use. So we're advocating, when we're practicing inclusive education, it must be inclusive totally. Let us look at the structure of the classrooms. Let's look at the textbooks. Let's look at the teacher factor. How best the teachers are being trained to handle issues of albinism. Because if the teacher is very hostile to the albinism person, a child, that child will become a dropout from school. Because if the teacher did not know how to handle the person with albinism, the person will not be comfortable in school. Do you know that the person with albinism in the class needs to sit in front in order to see what the teacher is writing on the board? Okay. How many teachers are used to that? No. Because when we were brought up, a teacher by profession, so in school, in colleges of education, we made to understand that we have three types of disability: the visually impaired, the hearing impaired, and the physically challenged. That
was the point I was going to make. That for most people, including myself, growing up, albinism was not considered a disability. Yep. And so even for those considered disability, policy isn't fair to them already. Yep. So you can imagine for you who ain't considered disability, yes, you probably won't get nothing.
That is it. So that's the challenge. But consistent advocacy. Now, even look at the Disability Act, the Act 715. What is the framework of that act? The act, even the preamble that defines disability, is even discriminatory. So it doesn't even cater for only other group of disabilities.
It doesn't mention your constituency.
If you are making a law and you put that includes, you don't make it open. You don't make it open. You need to make it open because tomorrow.
Because by saying includes, implicit is an exclusion of others.
Yes. So for instance, even in America, we have obesity, which is that qualifies as disability. But if you said, just to mention a few, just list a few of the disabilities that you know, excluding those that are yet to come. Who knows the cerebral palsy? As at today, people don't even recognize that cerebral palsy is part of the disability fraternity. But if you concentrate on these three major visually impaired, the hearing impaired, and the physically challenged, if you concentrate on these people, then you're discriminating others.
So the top key things: health, education, and...
Let's go to employment.
I'll come back to that because I want to bring other voices in on that. I mean, what do you say to that, Alexander? Some of the key things. He's touched on three: health, education, employment. Okay. What for you are the key issues?
For me, it's employment.
Okay.
I think employment is key because once one is given employment, you boost his economic capacity and is able to access other rights. Are
people with disabilities still discriminated against when it comes to employment?
No, very hugely.
In what specific way does this manifest?
No, as we sit here, there's no employment program for persons with disabilities. There are so many challenges. Okay, when persons with disabilities want to access employment, I mean, our buildings are not accessible, our built environments are not accessible. There's no provision for persons with disabilities to be able to get employment. And as I was waiting in the studio, I hear information from the ground. Some were saying automatic employment after university, and I'm a strong advocate for that, because you see, for a person with disability, you go through a lot of challenges. Your parents have been able to educate you to complete university. Why can't the government assure you automatic employment so that right from university you get into employment, so you can also contribute, so that you relieve the burden from your parents? But here again, you complete university, you sit at home, no job, your parents keep on taking care of you. It's a disincentive in educating you, because at a point your parents were deciding whether to educate you, the person with disability, or to educate the non-disabled person. Because the non-disabled person, if he completes school and there's no job, he can do other jobs. Okay, he can go and dig concrete. He can be a driver's mate. He can carry something. He can do other things. For person with disability, your chances are limited. So there should be a deliberate program to ensure that persons with disability, after school, you are given employment. Those who could not continue school
in the public sector.
In the public sector.
Okay.
In the public sector.
So the state should guarantee jobs for persons with disability in the public sector.
Exactly. And that will motivate persons with disabilities to strive to go to educate themselves. It will motivate parents to push and educate their children with disability. And once you get a job, you can access other rights. Your status are improved. In society, you can also contribute. You don't become a liability like it is now. Because I mean, in the family, if you can't contribute anything, it means that you are not counted among family when issues come for discussion. So employment is key. The next issue is about accessibility, access to the built environment. You see, when one is able to move, it enhances his opportunity of accessing other benefits within the society. But when it becomes difficult, and that links up to access to transport. For example, I live in Nungwa and I sit in the wheelchair and I want to come to Tama Station. It's very difficult to come if I don't have money to take a taxi.
You're right.
So that is the second issue, access to transport. The next issue is about health.
Okay.
Health is key. And when there's a program to ensure that persons with disabilities are able to access their right to health and ensure that they are healthy and able to participate in all other economic activities, then persons with disabilities will also contribute to society. Look at the health insurance, and what we see there is the indigents. Persons with disabilities are not indigents.
Yeah.
You understand? We have our status. We are not useless. You understand? We can also contribute. But when our key issues like assistive devices and other things that will make us be able to participate are not captured within the health program, then you deny us the access.
I mean, so these are fundamental things. I want to quickly bring in Alexander Bankole on this particular conversation. So I've heard I think your issues align greatly. I mean, because the health, the employment is leading for you. What is the topmost priority for you?
The topmost priority is education, because if you have better education, you can.
No, but that's an important point.
Yes.
So you can get all the education you want. If the end game isn't sorted out, you might come out and still be discriminated against.
That is it.
You'll probably be more qualified than the able person.
Even if you have education, you're more qualified, the employment is not even guaranteed.
Yeah, true.
Yes,
absolutely. I mean, the able-bodied people with full qualifications are already struggling.
Already struggling.
And then just imagine the person with disability with the same qualification already disadvantaged. So there's a link there, right?
Yeah. But if you are assured employment, you can quickly educate yourself.
Yeah, I mean that will encourage more an incentive to go to school.
Exactly.
Stay with me. I want to bring in Alexander Bankole. Alexander, what are your top priority issues? Is it the same as you've just articulated, or there's an extra layer you want to add to this? Sorry, please can you mute the Zoom for me? We can hear you now, yes.
Okay.
We can hear you now.
Okay, so, great. So in relation to the issues of priorities, I think within the disability community, the listed issues that are by Newton, and then my namesake Alexander over there, and are not so different from the ones we have generally as a federation. Of course, they do include, when you look at issues of healthcare, for instance, we narrow down to sexual and reproductive health and the need to concentrate on that for persons with disabilities. And we also look at issues of affirmative action. Now, Evans, but before we go there, I would just want to point out that you would realize in the organizing of the ballot box program across the country, one key thing that multimedia did together with Star Ghana is to make sure that persons with disabilities were targeted as key participants to solicit their views as to what the key issues were. It is unfortunate that in the development of the manifestos of the various political parties, no deliberate attempt was made to engage the disability community, especially led by the Ghana Federation of Disability Organizations. As campaign is ongoing currently, no specific effort is being made to target persons with disabilities, to still engage them, to ascertain what their real and crucial needs are. I like what you said initially when you were engaging Newton. Disability is not indeed a homogeneous entity. There is extreme diversion in disability in relation to the categories of disability. And over here, let me quickly just make the correction that when you look at section 59 of the Act 715, what makes the definition close-ended is the fact that the phrase with the definition starts by indicating that disability means X, Y, Z, and goes ahead to only stipulate 3 main categories of disabilities. This is as opposed to the Article 1 of the Convention on Rights of Persons with Disabilities that uses the open-ended phrase to say disability includes, but seeks to indicate that it is not limited to these, since disability is an evolving concept. In relation to the specific issues, the common fund is one of the issues that successive governments have thrown out there as the key challenge of persons with disabilities. One of the issues we have just realized in recent times is that, for instance, the current administration clearly indicates that the common fund has been increased since 2017 from 2% to 3%. We find that on paper to be accurate, but in practice to be inaccurate. Why is that the case? It is the case because when you look at 2% of the nominal figure of 7.5% of Ghana's revenue that was going to the district. It is the same as 3% of the nominal figure of 5% of the country's revenue going to the local assemblies. So, since 2010 till now, unless there is an actual increase in the quantum of revenue generated by government, the value of money going to the district for persons with disabilities have literally remained the same. I've heard others even make the argument that in some cases it is even less because the 2%, the 3% that they get is actually 3% of the actual figure going to the district after deduction of capital expenditure at the national level by the Common Fund Administrator. All these, for me, are key challenges that we need to look at, but not simply focus on. In relation to employment, the Ghana Federation of Disability Organizations, related organizations have actually suggested to government, and we have actually gone ahead to submit a draft policy document, which is an employment equity policy for government. We will look at what happens, Evans, you work in a corporate arena, and you know that one of the things that have helped the engagement of women, for instance, in the employment sector is what you want to call an equal employment policy or a diversity and inclusion policy that seems to be in favor of recruiting a lot more women. We have advised government that Ghana needs the same policy in relation to persons with disabilities, so that, and this will be for both the public and the private sector, so that there is a quota set for each employer to ensure that within their employment sector, they do have some persons with disabilities recruited. Additionally,
Kofi Sajaba, into this conversation. Stay with me. I want to bring her in here because she was recently the gender minister. Also because you brought the gender question and drawing parallels between what is done for the gender and women as against disability, persons with disability. I mean, there are lessons we can learn from the affirmative action bill, for example, that is being pushed through Parliament, etc. And the proposals I've seen both MPP and NDC put forward to create, leave a quota system for women. So 30%, for example, NDC says in their 2020 manifesto, they want to reserve 30% of all, positions in government for women, for example, right? The question is, I mean, coming back to deal with the issue of disability, why can't we mirror that sort of policy approach by having a quota system? I mean, say in the area of employment, in the area of representation and decision-making process, put quota systems there that allows people with disability, I guess, to access a bit more of these, opportunities, just as we're doing for, say, gender. I mean, you have a lot of experience there. Share with me what you think, the powers that be, the duty bearers have done and can do in this area.
Yes, thank you very much. The question of equity and fairness for persons with disability is a big worry. And when I was at the ministry, we re-amended the affirmative action and included a portion for persons with disability, that there was the need for quotas for both women and persons with disability. And so they have had to take it back to the various groups to look at it and then take it back to cabinet. It is important that we as a nation agree that the time has come for persons with disability to be treated with equality and equity. You cannot have about 3% of your population being persons with disability, being left out, in spite of the fact that Ghana has signed on to the UN Convention of the Rights of Persons with Disability. In the area of education, in the health, in the area of employment, in the area of socialization, even in politics, in governance, you would see that persons with disability are woefully misrepresented or not even represented at all. And for me, that is one of the reasons why I work in that area currently with the Henry Jaba Memorial Foundation. One of the key areas that government needs to work on is the moratorium. That was put in for 2006, and it has elapsed. That every public place and even private places should be accessible. To date, what do we see? You go to places and unless you are carried like a chief in a palanquin, if you use a wheelchair, you cannot access it. A lot of the places don't have lifts and they don't have ramps. How do you expect persons who are using crutches to climb Kolebu up to the 4th floor? Or any other institution for that matter that has a staircase.
Okay, so the connection there isn't helping, but I want to quickly come back to the studio. What do you make of this quota approach that has come up now? Will that address any of the issues?
Yes, we believe in that the slogan that nothing about us without us. Mm. Let's go to the government. When we talk about the quota system, let's start from even the grassroots, from the local level of governance. How many persons do we have at these assemblies who are, 1, elected, 2, appointed as members of this assembly? Mm. Coming to the central governance issue, how many persons with disability do we have in the central administration, in each successive government? Not just having one person that just represent the entire. Even that person must be an activist. Hmm. Over here in disability circles, we are not talking about being an activist to a political party before you have that appointment. We're talking about inclusive. If Alex is an employment person and we needed to appoint a minister or a deputy minister in charge of employment, and it must be a person with disability, we must go for Alex, irrespective of where he belongs to. Mm-hmm.
Are you Professor?
Yeah, that is one thing that we need to look at. If you go to any other countries, of which we copied from them, we say we are the father of democracy, but we copy from other countries. They have that quota system. If you go to Kenya, I can use that example. We have a person with albinism who is even in the Senate, who is even the deputy chair to the Senate. We go to Tanzania. We have an ambassador who is a person with albinism. You go across the Eastern African and the Southern African countries, you see person with disability at the forefront of policy implementation and decision making. In Ghana, we see it on paper, it is there. How many persons that is, we're looking through the manifestos of all the political parties, they have it there. We employ this number of persons with disability, we employ this number of persons, we appoint this number of persons, but in reality, how many of them? They use one nominal one to represent the lot. Go to the decision making that started from the grassroots.
At the local level.
Last 2 years, last year, how many persons with disability were given the incentive to go and contest at these assembly elections? Even those who contested, how did they fare? Because they were booted out because you are not capable of doing what the able persons are doing. I get it. So the quota system can do, but how best can we implement it and make it practicable?
So for me, I think for a developing country like Ghana, the quota system is good to start with. The quota means that you have a figure, and so deliberately you have to make sure that you have to ensure that this number of people occupy this position.
Okay. What number will you recommend?
No, the quota system, we can begin with 5%.
Okay, 5% of what?
Or the total
of 5% of whatever total number of people you are employing.
In the public service?
In the public service.
Must be private.
5%.
Must be people
with disability.
Will you agree 5%?
Yes, to start with.
Start with, okay. Yes. Go on, you're making a point.
So it is good to start with. Because if you don't put in the quota system, nothing happens. Because sometimes I ask myself, don't the ministers and all of us have persons with disabilities in our families? Don't we see them? Why is it that when we are developing policies, we don't factor them? You see, all policies, all programs, you see, they do it, and then they say, oh, persons with disabilities, we have not captured.
So you're like an afterthought.
So, an afterthought. Why does it happen like that way? You understand? So, but if there's a policy that ensure that 3% or 5% are persons with disabilities, you make sure that they are included. Look at the District Assembly Common Fund. It started with 2% when His Excellency Kufuor was in government, and they ensured that the 2% of the common fund goes to persons with disabilities. If it doesn't happen, we come and chase you up. This government says they have increased it to 3%. Even I hear is being contested, but the point is that there's a percentage, so that goes to persons with disabilities. So the quota system is the best way to start with.
Okay.
The developed countries have gone above the quota system and ensure, because disability is part of life. Okay, so they ensure that persons with disability, once you are qualified, whether it is 20% or 30%, because they are also human beings just like everybody, and so they ensure that they are factored into the system.
I mean, very fascinating thoughts on this. Madam Otiku Fisajaba was elaborating a bit on the inclusion of aspects of this in the affirmative action. Before we lost her there, the line wasn't helping. Madam Fisajaba, if you may expand on the points you're making there about how that inclusion in the Act, Affirmative Action Act, may be the game changer.
Yeah, for me, that is the game changer. We were asking for not 5% or 2%, but 40% for women and persons with disability in areas like in Parliament, at the District Assembly, in the areas of employment, in education. Because like I said, if you have 5% of your population being persons with disability and with various births, accidents, and maybe violence and ethnic fightings and what have you, more people can become persons with disability or old age or ailments. So it's important that we prepare properly and ensure that this quota system is implemented. We've been talking about it for too long. Since Act 715 in 2006, we are now in 2020. For how long can we keep talking? The implementation must begin, and the enforcement of the rights of persons with disability must be put in place, because it can happen to anybody. It does not make sense that we keep thinking of persons with disability as an afterthought. As my good friend, Mr. Tete has said, everybody has somebody in their family who is a person with disability. For now, I need to wear glasses, otherwise I can't read. My father suffered from stroke, and he was a person with disability till the day he died, because he could no longer do a lot of things. You can give birth today, and the person is a person with disability. Are you going to throw that person away? We must make provision and leave and say that we are not going to leave them out. We must not think of them as an afterthought, because it is with us.
Yeah.
It is with us. Day in, day out, somebody is being born, somebody has wrong medication, out of old age. Stroke invariably turns you into a person with disability. So we cannot keep putting it at the back of things. We must bring it to the forefront of discussions and the implementation of the rights of persons with disability. It really irks me when they're put behind and not in front, because we must look out for the most vulnerable in our society.
I mean, that I guess is the crux of this. Now, I mean, we're going to take social media comments shortly. Ernest Menu will harvest a few of your comment for me to share. I'm going to see a few of that on my timeline as well that I'll share with you. But I want to move into the area within the context now of an impending elections in just over 20 something days. I want to ask my panelists whether they have seen that all the parties really have their manifestos out. The two main parties that we are certain one of them might win. Whether their proposals they have proposals, are they addressing the concerns that have been articulated here tonight, and whether it's satisfactory, and what more can they do in terms of advocacy going forward. I want to start with you, Alexander Bankole. I'm pretty sure I have the both parties' manifesto before me right now when it comes to persons with disability. You could see in there that the NDC has the sheer number of proposals than the MPP has in terms of persons with disability. The question I'd like to ask you, Alexander Bankole, is both parties or all the parties, are they addressing these issues we've all articulated here tonight in their manifestos and their campaigns? Do they address them at all for you? Sorry, please unmute the Zoom.
Sorry.
Yeah,
okay, Gary. So, yes, thanks, Evans. In relation to your question, most of the issues are being articulated within the manifesto, especially in relation to that of the NDC. And there are a lot of issues there. So when you take, I'm sure as you went around, the commonest issue you would find in relation to persons with disabilities at the local level and what bothers them happens to be the common fund.
Yeah.
Now, both parties, i.e. the NDC and the MPP, actually speak to issues of the common fund. The only thing is that they are all relatively vague in relation to what they would do where the common fund is concerned. They both indicate that they would increase the common fund should they have the reins of power the next time around. The extent to which they are going to increase the common fund is actually not stipulated. And when you look carefully at the NDC's manifesto, particularly their promise A and B, that is under 7.3.3 of their manifesto, they seem to have some communication challenge over there in relation to what they specifically want to do with regards funds for persons with disabilities. So there's one proposal where they're going to have a new fund set up for persons with disabilities. That is supposed to be aside the common fund. But when you look at this new fund, and I'm specifically talking about B, so if you have it before, you can look at what they say in B. In B, they talk about setting up a new fund and ensuring that it's being managed by persons, including persons with disabilities. But then they go ahead to indicate that what they will do for this new fund is to review the guidelines. And the Federation's position is that if you say it's a new fund, what guideline exists in the first place for you to say you're going to review it? So that obviously has to be altered to talk about establishing a guideline for implementing that new fund. But apart from that, the other issues on education, there are a myriad of issues spoken about. So Newton and Alex talked about accessibility, access to the built environment. The NDC in particular talks about increasing access to the educational built environment, but puts no number on the number of educational facilities that they seek to actually make accessible, and put no time frame in relation to the number of educational facilities they seek to make available. Funding of inclusive education is also not adequately touched on in either of the manifestos. However, importantly for us is the need to look at the human resource to manage inclusive education.
Yeah.
The NDC does make mention about the human resource to manage inclusive education. And one thing we like is that the distinguishing factor between inclusive education and special education in the NDC manifesto.
Yeah.
They go ahead to talk about promoting, putting in place incentives for teachers in special education setting, or basically handling issues of education of persons with disabilities. However, the problem is the kind of incentives that they seek to try and propose are not the incentives that those who work in that arena of education have been asking for.
Yeah, what incentives, briefly on this, what incentives exactly is it that the people working in this area will want?
So they have specifically asked for a component of their salary to be drawn as an allowance for incentivizing them in the area. Rather, so they were asking for about 30% of their basic salary to constitute some allowance as an incentive. In addition to this, they were looking at ensuring that they are prioritized when you look at furthering their education to enhance their capacity to return to the kind of jobs that they are doing. Accommodation facility, among others, are the kind of things that they have been looking for.
Yeah, I mean,
the manifestos do not
touch on these specifically. I want to take a break. When I come, I'll hear from Newton on this, and all of you really on us now are beginning to assess whether all these parties seeking your vote, whether they are addressing these concerns. I mean, why is this important? Because, and correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, the statistics show that they are estimated 5 million Ghanaians have disabilities. It could be more now. I mean, at least, estimated 5 million.
Yeah.
That's a huge segment of the population, very significant.
Which can make a president.
Oh, exactly. I mean, you can be the kingmakers very easily.
Yes.
In this year's elections, right? I mean, so I'm curious why the parties are not deliberately fashioning out policies, of course, backing it, more importantly with implementation if they win, to target this group, because 5 million is a huge population of electorate. I mean, 5 million, like majority of them can vote, will be qualified to vote this year. Well, when I go for the break, we'll come back to this conversation about the parties addressing the real needs of people with disability, as you've heard articulated on Ghana Connect tonight. Remember that this is a special Ghana Connect show. It's brought to you by the Star Ghana Foundation with funding from the UK, AID, and the European Union. It's a conversation with persons with disability, of course, scrutinizing the issues that we have managed to put together from our ballot box shows across the country. You want to stay with me. When I return, I'll be sharing some of your comments with you on our many social media platforms. Tiko Fisa-Jaba will also join me with her own thoughts on this very important conversation about the parties addressing the real needs of this huge group of people. If I'm a politician, I would have a whole team just meeting the 5 million, looking for them wherever they are, and selling my proposals to them, because that can win me in the elections. Stay with me. And you're still live here on this special edition of Ghana Connect, live from the studios of the Joy News channel. We are also live, obviously, on Joy 99.7 FM. We are having a conversation about persons with disability, and as we approach the elections, examining the policy interventions as they've been put forward by the political parties seeking their votes, and whether these policies actually address their needs. as we have uncovered, traveling across the country without ballot boxes on that special show, all made possible by the Star Ghana Foundation with funding from the UKAID and also from the European Union. Just before the break, we were bringing in their perspectives on whether the parties are addressing their real needs in the policy proposals they are putting forward in their respective manifestos. I've heard the view of Mr. Bankole there. I want to come into the studio on this. Let me start with you, Newton. Newton, are the parties addressing these needs of yours?
Yeah, deliberately, indeliberately, both parties in their manifesto wanted to addressing the needs, are trying to address the needs of persons with disability, but in two different ways.
Okay.
As being put up by my good friend Alexander Bankole. Yes, going through the NDC manifesto, we have seen a lot of issues that they've raised, varying from health, education, employment, and what. Even
what the comment I have is compare the two manifestos on this. The NDC is more comprehensive.
It's more comprehensive, yes,
than the MPP
than that of the MPP,
in this sector. Yeah.
That one is it's a fact. That the NDC manifesto is more comprehensive as per what we were looking for than that of the NPP. What I wanted to be elaborated on at the NDC with the NDC manifesto is about the involvement or inclusion of persons with disability to cover the LEAP. The LEAP should cover the person with disability. Most of the times, if you go to most of the communities, I don't know the criteria they use in selecting the aged who benefiting from the livelihood employment program. But I wanted the person with disability to be also captured using that process. And again, looking at the NPP manifesto, we just wanted to make a quick intervention here about how the decentralization of the National Disability Council. Over here, to me, I will be very comfortable if this Disability Council is being converted or being elevated to an authority, which would draw its own budget from the consolidated fund, that it can meet its funding needs and then work effectively to meet the growing demands and needs of persons with disability in Ghana. But for us, if it's been elevated to the authority level, then they can go ahead and do their decentralization. They have the power to do the decentralization.
Let me ask a question. At the top of this conversation, you said education one of the top priorities for you. NDC says provide free tertiary education for persons with disability. Would that solve any problem for you?
That would solve part of the problem, because if you provide a free tertiary education, but most especially, let's look at the foundation, which is the basic education. How accessible is it to all children with disability?
So at the basic level?
The basic level should also be very much accessible.
So MPP on that says increase resources and infrastructure for special needs education across the country.
No, we are not talking about special needs education here. We're talking about inclusive education.
Okay. What's the difference?
Inclusivity is that where we have person with disability in the same school, in the same society, enjoying the same facility with person without the disability, having the same tuition, but that is called integration. Whereas they learn from each other to be included as part of the society. But when we talk about special education, special school, that is where all persons with disability, depending on the category criteria, are being put into, have been housed or put in a very specific place and give them a tuition, whether they don't have any form of inclusivity.
So MPP also says, wherever possible, provide facilities to enable disabled children to be integrated within regular schools.
Wherever possible.
Yeah.
We have inclusive education policy. What is the use of that policy?
Okay. So what about you? What's your own assessment? I mean, at your end of the party's proposals this year?
Yeah. So generally, I also agree with you that the NDC manifesto is comprehensive than MPP, and I'm particularly disappointed with the MPP manifesto.
Why?
Because the manifesto looks hollow. It doesn't have anything. You understand? Party in government, we expect more from the MPP government or MPP party and their manifesto, because I can see only three things. 151, we talked about the common fund from 3% to 2% to 3%, which is already in implementation. Okay, so what is new about that? Okay, we want more. How are they ensuring that the 3%, okay, of the common fund is actually getting to persons with disability? There are a couple of district assemblies that have misappropriated the fund. You understand? So we need to be innovative. For all these years, we were trying to review the guidelines for the implementation of the common fund, and it hasn't been done. You understand? So that is why I see it as we need more. The second thing I see is the decentralization of the National Council on Persons with Disabilities. No, we want more funding. We want the status of the council to be raised in such a manner that they can also submit their budget. They don't have to go through the ministry. You understand? We want a council that is autonomous, that can ensure that things are implemented. That when a facility, for example, Joy FM is not accessible, they are able to come and question you and ensure that your place is accessible.
There is a sense in which, for the MPP, they believe in the last 4 years they have sort of done quite significant number of things for the persons with disability, that in the next 4 years they simply have to consolidate. And I guess they will explain that is possibly the reason why they are not as heavy in the 2020 manifesto as they were in the 2016, because they gave an account of what they believe they've done. For example, and they claim that government has implemented the increase in common fund disbursement to persons living with disability from 2 to 3%, they said. They also claim that government has released 3.1 billion in public sector workers tier 2 pensions contributions that were withheld for a long time by previous administrations. I mean, and then
but that does not concern persons with disability.
And then it says an interministerial coordinating committee on decentralization, and the office of the head of local government service has been set up to ensure that disability issues are mainstreamed into MMDAs. And then finally, the Disability Council, in collaboration with the Ghana Federal Disability Organization, have drafted an equal employment policy that seeks to address, I mean, this is your fundamental issue, right?
Yeah.
So tell me this. So the Disability Council, in collaboration with the Ghana Federation Disability Organization, have drafted an equal employment policy that seeks to address disability employment issues. 50% of all toll booths are now manned by PLWDs.
That is it.
Under the Presidential Empowerment for Women Entrepreneurs with Disability, we provided 850 female PLWD entrepreneurs with 2 million cedis to help them scale up their businesses. So this is what they believe they've done.
Exactly.
Okay. Is it what you say about what you say to this?
No, not at all. We expect more from them.
Okay.
We expect more from them. If you say the council together with the federation have drafted an equal employment policy. Some of you have not seen the policy.
Okay.
Okay. So what is the government itself doing? Is government saying that it's going to implement the employment policy? It's vague there. Then you continue to say that 50% of the toll booths
are being manned by persons with disability.
As if all persons with disability can do is toll booth. You understand? I quite agree that the toll booth was also important, because I mean you have other people who can do the toll booth. But as we speak, a lot of people working at the toll booth are being laid off, because the toll booths, they've set a target, and for persons with disability who are even employed, okay, are not able to participate. And so most of them are being laid off by the contractors who take over the toll booth. You see, so I mean, we are talking about what is in the manifesto that will move persons with disability community about the 5,000 or 5 million,
the 5 million
persons with disability to be able to vote for the party. And this is not convincing enough.
I mean,
okay?
let me
to talk about toll booths and talk about employment policy draft, which is not a national policy that is being taken over by the state. This is a draft that because for lack of an employment policy, some civil societies came out with a draft. It's for government to adopt that draft and ensure that all persons with disabilities or organizations participate in getting that draft and becomes a national policy.
Let me bring in Madam Atiku Fisujaba on this. This question about matching the policy proposals to the actual needs of persons with disability. What do you say? I mean, we have 20-something days on election, and I guess the verdict here is that we want to see the parties being more precise in what they are proposing to do for the person with disability, that constituency. What's your take on this?
Thank you very much. I would not want to wade into the political discussion. As I said to you, I have quit politics. So it will not be fair on my part to wade into that. But the things that I would like to see of any government is, one, a database for all persons with disability, district by district, community by community, so that we know that in this district, in this community, we have X number of persons with disability. And so for the district common fund, you are able to know that for year 2019, we're able to service maybe 2% or 10%. And so in 2020, this is the number we are going to attend to, so that the implementation of the common fund will be better and more people will be able to access it, not only the vociferous people. Number two, it's important for us to also know about accessibility. Because when you don't have access, how do you go to school? A lot of the schools, they have these high verandas. So when we talk of inclusivity or integration, you exclude all those who cannot climb those high verandas to be able to go to school. And having teachers who are trained to handle children with disability in all these schools will also help. The other part of it is the social welfare department is the least resource at the Ministry of Gender. It's important that every government should resource the social welfare with staffing, with structures, with finance, so that they will be able to visit the persons with disability and support them in their issues. In terms of the special needs schools, there's nothing wrong with having special needs schools, because some children will always need special schools. Not all children can be integrated. Every child that can be integrated should be. But for those who will need special care, there's a need to provide something on the National Health Insurance for medical assessments. There's a need to put the SANS lotion screen, the lotion for albinism, for persons living with albinism, to be able to go on it, because it's expensive
be able
to get it. There is a need to be able to, just a minute, to have persons who need calipers or wheelchairs or other assistive devices or mobility devices, to also be able to access them on the National Health Insurance. We cannot say that we are building a society that is inclusive, that cares, when we leave all these people out because they are not factored in.
I mean, I want to say a big thank you to you, Madam Atiku Fisujaba, and of course my panel. We just run out of time on this, but I want to share with you very quickly before I go. I mean, we have one political party whose presidential candidate is himself a person with disability, as in the CPP. And I just pulled up their manifestos. They have 3 main policy proposals on persons with disability. It's not as comprehensive as I was expecting it to be because of who he is, but there's just 3. I mean, introducing a legislative amendment that has become necessary to close the gap between Disability Act and the UN Convention is one. Increasing from 3% to 4% the proportion of District Assembly Common Fund, and then tightening measures for enforcing compliance with the current provisions regarding unrestricted physical access. Those are the only three things that the CDP is promising. Make of that what you will. Thank you very much for connecting with me tonight. Thank you, gentlemen, for connecting. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.